Start with. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Michelle Morris from Consolidated Planning Group, and we have a great webinar today about how to access the long-term services and supports for employment and more opportunities and supports for your loved ones out there. So we have Tricia Perez and Nehtra Davis Moore with us. And they're going to help us understand, some of the stuff that's out there for our kiddos. Before we get started, I do want to let everyone know that we are recording this webinar. After we're finished presenting, we're going to put this on our YouTube channel, and you're going to receive a copy of the slides in your email if you've registered for this webinar, along with a link to the YouTube channel. So you'll have the slides, a link to the video. And if you have not pre-registered and you want those things, all you need to do is email us, contact@cpgcares.net, and we will send you those slides. The other thing you need to know is that since we're in webinar mode, we cannot see or hear the audience. So the best thing for you to do is get acquainted with that chat box, because if you have a question or comment, we would love to hear it. You just need to put it into the chat. So a little bit first about Consolidated Planning Group, who CPG is and why we do what we do, and why we present these webinars. Well, first and foremost, we are a holistic financial planning firm, but all of the 4 financial advisors at CPG are also parents to loved ones with needs. So we have decided to turn our practice towards serving the community. We almost exclusively work with families where there is a loved one with different needs. We're located just outside of Houston, Texas, in the Sugar Land area, but we serve clients all across the country. So while our webinars might focus a lot on Texas because that's where we are, we can help you or your friends or relatives anywhere that they live in the United States. We've been in business for over 30 years in financial services, investments, life insurance, securities, all of that kind of thing. And we are chartered special needs consultants, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and nationally certified Social Security advisors. We take this very seriously, and we truly understand the unique challenges and nuances that you are facing as parents to loved ones with needs. Families come to us because we can help them with things like transition planning, future cost of care estimates, how to protect your family if something should happen to you. We help you understand your state and federal benefits and the local resources that are available to you. All of these different things like the ABLE account, the waivers, and the trust, and how they all work together. And it's really rare that you find a service like ours because most financial advisors don't know anything about the special needs planning side of what we do. There are over 263,000 financial advisors in the US, but fewer than 200 focus on special needs planning. So there's a lot of noise and confusion out there, and we're here to help you through that. We want to help you navigate your journey. And some free advice we always give out at the beginning of these webinars because it's just so important. Sometimes we hear that question, when is the best time for me to start planning? Well, the answer is always right now. It does not matter how old or young your child is, or if it's later in your life and you haven't gotten started, you're not going to be in trouble. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just we're going to pick up where you are and start now. Because the longer runway you have, the smaller the changes need to be to make things better in your world, right? Because you have more of an impact. And plus, you're going to be calmer and planning in a relaxed state. When you're planning through a crisis and you're already so stressed and anxious, it's not going to be anywhere near as good. So start thinking now. about what's going to happen in the future. What does that look like? How will it be funded? There are great vocational options, residential options, community options, work programs, all kinds of things that might be a good fit for your family. But you do need to go ahead and check out those opportunities early because they might have waiting lists. And then finally, don't just automatically assume that the best solution for a successor caregiver for your loved one is going to be their sibling. A lot of people just think, oh, it's easy. Big sister will take care of little brother. Well, big sister is probably in agreement right now, but when the rubber meets the road, she might realize that she's bitten off a little bit more than she can chew, and it could create some resentment there. And also from little brother's perspective, here's been his best friend and his partner in crime, his running mate all these years. And now she wants to step into the role of caregiver. It might feel a little bit authoritarian or parent-like to him. She wants to be in charge. What? She's my best friend. She's my sister, not my mom. And that can create some tension too. So just be really careful on both sides of that equation. Now, if you have any further questions on the financial and special needs planning side, I'll tell you later how you can secure a completely free initial consultation with Consolidated Planning Group. But before we get to that, I want to turn everything over to our guest speakers today. Thank you so, so much for being here to help us out with this topic. And everybody who's watching, thank you. Trisha, Nehtra, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Um, Good morning. Well, afternoon. I do that every time I come on with CPG. It's right at the top of the noon. Good afternoon. I'm Nehtra Davis Moore. I am one of the program specialists with the Vocational Rehab Agency. We are under Texas Workforce Commission. And I've got my wonderful counterpart with me, Miss Tricia Perez, who is our LTSS specialist, program specialist. And, a lot of times when we talk about benefits, whether it be Social Security or our long-term supports and services in HHSC world, a lot of it collides. So that is why you have both of us here today. Um, we are going to jump into basically what is long-term services and supports. Um, it's it's in its title. I mean, I think it's pretty
The
self-explanatory. Um,
answer is in the question.
the answer is in the question, but it really is a wide, broad a range of services that can be paid or unpaid in relation to medical supports or personal care services for folks with needs. Um, we've got a lot of folks with needs in the state of Texas, and it seems like those numbers just increase by the day. So, long-term services and supports are going to absolutely be an ongoing need for several of us, whether it be on a personal level, professional level, but we are seeing the numbers obviously increase. When it comes to long-term services and supports, right, especially in the state of Texas, you may find it challenging to access those long-term services and supports. But that's one of the reasons why we're here today to let you guys know what services are available in the state of Texas and a bit on how to access them and how some of the programmatic side of things operate. Oftentimes, the main source of funding in relation to LTSS is going
Sorry,
to
are we
be,
still on this one? I'm so
yes,
sorry.
no, we are, you're fine, is going to be Medicaid. Okay. Medicaid is the main funder when we're talking about long-term services and supports. And we do have the agency that we're from, because we're from vocational rehab. We do have a bit of extended services, but it is nothing like what you're thinking in relation to the long-term services and supports in that you would probably be needing. when it comes to that long-term scale. Extended services and long-term services, two very different things. So just want to make that clear. And a lot of times when people think about vocational rehab, they don't connect the main dot that vocational rehab is not for long-term support. Okay. There may be situations where extended services can be utilized, but when it comes to when we're talking about anything long-term, that is when we've got to look at that Medicaid side, that HHSC side of the fence. Okay. Um, so extended services, right? I just mentioned this and why it's so different. It is about ongoing support and services, right? But it's in relation to supporting an individual when it centers around employment. And vocational rehabilitation, that is ultimately what voc rehab is for, employment. A lot of times, families will come to VR and, think that VR can provide a lot of things under the sun. We have some constraints within vocational rehab that we don't have as much wiggle room as on the LTSS side when we're talking about what we'll talk about here in a bit, the Medicaid waivers, for example. Extended services are not always available to every single one who comes through vocational rehab, for example, but it is going to be based on um, eligibility needs. I mean, there's a lot of criteria that's around it when we're talking about extended services. Um, and so I don't want people to think when they come to VR, it's going to be an option that's always there. That's not always going to be the case. And of course, it is going to be a case by case basis as anything else. But I do want it to be noted that within vocational rehab, we do have some federal constraints that, unfortunately, we just can't wiggle out of. Now, if we could use a magical wand and give everyone everything under the sun, you know what? We probably would. I know I would. And I know Trisha would. And I know a lot of our VR counselors would. But we do have those parameters that we do have to operate in. Um, so let's examine some of the examples that you might see in relation to long-term services and support as extended services. It's going to obviously center around employment and maintaining employment, especially. So you got some job skills training, the assistance with some hard and soft skills. Transportation is a big one, a very big one. Transportation can often be a barrier to employment for many people, for example. So coming up with a long-term solution in relation to transportation may be something that can be worked out during extended services to where we can transition and may not have a lapse, in service due to transportation, for example. Um, Social Security income reporting. I don't think I can stress how serious and important and required Social Security reporting is. Yes, when it comes to Social Security, that is definitely my number one area that I work in every day. But I can tell you that I am seeing an increase in the number of overpayments. Reporting is important. Okay, reporting is important. Assistance with, addressing some of those ADLs and IDALs is going to be something that's needed. And obviously, it's going to center around employment. You have to know how to get ready to go to work, right? So some of those services are going to center around some of those ADLs. And then, of course, we have being able to manage a work schedule. That can be as simple as it sounds. It can be a very complicated situation for those with needs. When do I go to work? What do I have to wake up? When do I have to wake up? And especially if their schedule is, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a week, but getting them in the routine of knowing their work schedule sometimes needs some support on how to do that. Next slide.
Before we move slides, I just wanted to
Yep.
ask about transportation.
Yeah.
Would, I mean, I know it often means, services, para services that are going to help get them from one place to the other, but what about driver's ed? Oh, Trisha's answering that question in the chat box,
Yep.
but go ahead.
Go ahead, Trisha.
Oh, yes. So, driver's education is something that sometimes VR can assist with if a disability is impacting someone's ability to participate in driver's ed and obtain a license. And sometimes, even in regards to we do eval assessments if someone needs vehicle modification or so to utilize a modified vehicle, whether that be just steering and or whether it's a full modification with a wheelchair accessibility as well. So that is something that we can potentially assist with. Unfortunately, there's not just a black and white yes or no answer because it is case by case, and does there are some other considerations such as um, basic living requirements for us, which is potential contribution based on income situation. So, but it is definitely something that is a service that we can provide. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Definitely. And so a lot of times, folks will ask, well, how do we know if extended supports are needed? And there's some things that you'll want to pay attention to. Um, and it takes, a bit of assessment and some documenting, and maybe you're seeing some trends. So you can see some of these things on the screen here where as you're spending time with someone and your observations may point to some things that may need support. And those are things that you would want to share, especially in the circle of support that an individual may be receiving. Um, Especially when it comes to someone who is working with a vocational rehab counselor. Oftentimes we will see that there's that disconnect, right, between maybe they have support within their HHSC Medicaid waiver world. They've got their support system there, and they may be working with vocational rehab as well. It is very important for those two teams to be a united team, and discuss some of those services and supports that might be needed or maybe being observed. So that way, all sides of the fence can make sure that a person is getting what they ultimately need. Um, Next slide. So here are some helpful questions, right? Does someone come to your house to help you? Do you have a service coordinator or case manager? Does someone call you once a month to check in on you? Do you have Medicaid, Medicare, or do you have any of the Social Security disability benefits? It could be SSI, maybe it's SSDI, maybe someone's receiving a disability benefit from a parent, or they could be maybe receiving a disability-based benefit from a deceased spouse. The other question that you could ask is, what is your disability and when did it begin? Oftentimes, in relation to the onset of a disability, that can tell us a bit of what services may be floating around or what services may be needed, as far as, getting some resource and access to. We see non-paid natural extended supports all over the place, right? Oftentimes it could be a parent or a family member who is just so used to being hands-on and in there, and they don't realize how much effort they're putting in. And they also sometimes don't realize that there are resources out there that could give them some relief. Um, it is hard to be a caregiver. And oftentimes it's important to remember that caregivers need care too. So sometimes by doing that, right, uh, we've got to humble ourselves and utilize resources that are available, which is another reason why we're here speaking today. But being able to, in the professional aspect, observe how one is, getting the support they need, especially from family members, is crucial. Sharing information on, for example, how to access an interest list. And I think we'll touch on that in a bit. For the Medicaid waivers is important. Um, but I see it a lot with families who are just so used to going, and they don't know or haven't heard about resources available that they can utilize to help give some relief and support. The other thing that I like to touch on, especially in relation to non-paid and natural extended supports, is it is important to consider the long-term planning. It is very important to consider the long-term planning. When you are still here and able to do it is the best time to do it. Sometimes it's a hard conversation to have, but it's a conversation you want to have and get in order while you're here before you're not. I tell parents that all the time. Yes, it's a tough conversation, but it's a good conversation to have and get things in order when you are still here and able to. Um, so who provides extended services and long-term services and supports? We've got our wonderful Medicaid HCBS waivers. Waivers are amazing. However, there are interest lists that are years long to access those waivers. In order to access those waivers, right, or to even get more slots, what we're looking at is the good old L word, legislation to open more slots. That is one reason, well, that's the main reason why the interest lists are years long. I think for the HCS waiver, I think we're up to 17 years long for the interest list. So as soon as I always say, if you've got a good pediatrician that recognizes that something is going on, um, with your child very early on, and they mention going over to the local authority to get on an interest list for one of the Medicaid waivers, I say you keep that pediatrician for a good long time until your child turns 18, because that sets the tone for a lot of youth going into the LTSS world. The other thing that we have are the Medicaid state plan benefits and block grants. This is why we like Medicaid, because of the Medicaid state plans and block grants, because it does provide some extended services, especially in relation to attendant care. Attendant care is extremely expensive, extremely expensive. And really, the only thing that covers it is Medicaid. Attendant care is not covered like under private health insurance plans. Um, I always say that I would love to see folks gather together who are utilizing attendant care services and get their lobbying efforts in order to take some of those steps, right? But as of now, Medicaid, our state plan benefits, that's where we're seeing that attendant care being covered. We have our Aging and Disability Resource Center, known as our ADRCs, and then our wonderful local authorities. Our local authorities are the entities where they are the gateway to access Medicaid waivers, for example. They're obviously all over the state, but they're not all created equally, but each state or each city and county has a respective local authority. That's the gateway to access those Medicaid waivers, so the LTS services. We have Ticket to Work employment networks. They do provide some extended supports in relation to employment, and there's several across the state, but they're all centered around employment efforts when it comes to the Ticket to Work employment networks. You may have heard of them referenced as ENs. And then, of course, we've got private job coaching. Um, Technology is amazing right now, right? We're rapidly running through technology. The other day, I saw an entire, like, it's kind of like a robotic stand kind of system for someone who is playing golf. They are paraplegic, but able to stand with this machine and swing a driver, for example.
Right.
So technology is taking us very far. And then, of course, we have VR extended services for youth. And Trisha, I think that's what for ages 25 up to 25.
Prior to age or age.
Richa, we can't hear you.
Try it
You're
again.
not muted, but
Can you hear
there
me
you
now?
go.
Okay, I know my computer. But it is up to age 20 before until they turn age 25, up to 4 years, whichever occurs first. And those I think yeah, well, there's a slide that's just on that, but there are considerations that are made with that we look at, but we'll get into detail in a bit.
Thank you. So what is a home and community-based waiver?
Before we
Um,
go on, there's a lot of questions in the
oh,
chat about, when can we sign up for these things and how do we get them? But really, you don't have to wait until you're 18 and you don't get cut off if you don't get it before age 18. Can you just go over that real quick?
yes, and we will touch on, a bit of that. But as we're getting into the waiver discussion, so I do see a question about um, are the HCBS waivers dependent on age? Uh, some are. One in particular, the Yes waiver, which is through you can access the Yes waiver, for example, through um, the mental health side, authority side. But all of the other waivers, no. But I will say the sooner one gets on an interest list, the better. Um, like for example, any of us could um, go to the local authority and request to be on an interest list for the waivers. Now, when it comes time that a slot is open, that is when they're going to go through the eligibility criteria to determine if one meets the criteria to be on a particular waiver. So if your daughter turns 18, I wouldn't wait, Miss Estella. I would go ahead, and if you're seeing some signs now that some long-term supports are going to be needed, I would go ahead and reach out to your local authority. Um, and go ahead and request that to get your daughter on the interest list for the waivers. Do they get a service coordinator? Service coordinators do, when someone has a Medicaid waiver, yes, they will have a service coordinator through um, the local authority, but if they're on there's two other waivers where they may have a case manager or they will have a service coordinator that is through a managed care organization. Um, but so for like HCS, Texas Home Living, they will have a service coordinator through the local authority. Star Plus, they will have a service coordinator through one of the managed care organizations. And when I say managed care organizations, I mean like Superior Health, Molina, what's some of the other ones, United. So those, when you hear some of those names, like those big insurance company names, if you will, those are our managed care organizations. And there's different managed care organizations for different respective areas across the state. Case managers, you'll see those, I believe, in class, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but ultimately, waivers are essentially what they're called. It's in the title. Basically, it's that long-term support that is provided in a community-based setting, because it essentially waives off the cost in providing that care in the community versus a facility-based setting. So we like waivers because waivers do create a lot of quality of life for folks, and they're just really cool. I mean, they're cool because they open up a door for a lot of people to be able to live a good quality of life for a long time, longer than that we would have historically seen if we didn't have waivers.
Right. Well, and if we didn't have waivers, we would still see a lot of people institutionalized who didn't need to be,
Right.
or just not getting the services that they need.
Right. Right. Um, so I think the first two that we're going to touch on, is the most popular one that you may have heard, which is HCS, the Home and Community Services. And carved out from that was Texas Home Living. So Texas Home Living looks a lot like HCS. Um, it's just not as full as HCS, I guess I should say. But each of them do have, and all of the waivers, right, have a menu of services. And when I say a menu, right, when you think a menu, you have a menu before you and you essentially order things that you need, right? And so that's why the easiest way to describe how the services can look, it's going to depend on a person's need, on what may be built in and pulled out from their waiver, if that makes sense. Okay, once someone's eligible to receive the waiver. Okay. Um, The other ones, we've got community living assistance and support services, also known as CLASS. CLASS is going to have a wide array of folks who could be on CLASS. I have seen folks who are an administrative law judge, for example, have the CLASS waiver. The CLASS waiver is a very robust waiver. It's very robust. And then we have our deaf, blind, and multiple disabilities known as DBMD. But again, all all of these waivers all circle to long-term services and supports. Okay. And the way to access those interest list for these waivers, for the ones that we're going through, that is going to be your local authorities. So please get to know your respective local authorities. Michelle, I think I've shared it before, but if not, I can share a link where folks can put their zip code and find their respective local authorities, so they know, to make it easier.
We've shared that link before as well, but if
Okay.
you just Google LIDDA, LIDDA, but
Yes.
this is going to be the Harris Center if you're in Harris
Mhm.
County. Texana is Fort Bend County.
Yep.
There's MHMR, Tri-County, ACOG. If those are sounding familiar to you, that is your local authority.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I just wanted to note on the in the slide deck, there's one coming up that talks about the local authorities. The title on that, there is a link to find your LIDA.
Oh,
So
Perfect.
that's
That's coming.
and then we have waivers that center around those who might have some deeper medical needs. You'll have our medically dependent children's program, known as MDCP or Star Kids. And that, for example, it has an age range on there. We have our Star Plus HCBS waiver. I will say on the Star Plus waiver, That interest list is much shorter than any of the other ones. Okay. But again, not as robust as all of our other ones, but still provides a level of long-term supports that a person might need. And then we've got the yes waiver and adult mental health. So these two center around um, mental health. And that's why to access these particular ones, you're going to go, I know we said the LITA, right? But for these two, that's where you're going to be on the other side of the fence of the authority, and you're on the mental health side of the authority, the LMHA, Local Mental Health Authority. So to access those, if you've got maybe a youth who um, is having some serious, mental health disturbances, oftentimes I will tell you that the waiver is so underutilized, but it is there. A lot of people don't know about the yes waiver, and share it. Now you've learned about it today. If you've got maybe some family members, or maybe you yourself as a parent has a youth that is having some troubling times, look at reaching out to your LMHA and asking them about the yes waiver. Okay. Here is the wonderful how long the interest list are. It is sad when I see this slide. It does. It stings me every time. Um, it really does sting me every time. HCS 17 years, class 17, and these are years. Okay, these are years. It's not months. This is years. Texas Home Living 15, DBMD 6, Star Plus 3, Star Kids 2, and the Yes waiver is 1. But yes, the Yes waiver, for example, remember we've got that age range up to 19, and it's not as utilized. So for those youth, right,
Yeah, they can
that's
get the yes waiver.
they can get the Yes waiver. They can get the Yes waiver.
It's
Um,
really sad. And I think it's true what you said about, people need to contact their state and federal representatives. That's the only way we're going to get any help with this. Not
mhm,
by crying about it, not by wishing that there was more funding, but by our votes and our voices.
that's it. That's it. Sometimes when you want to be heard, you gotta call the right person. Right? You gotta call the right person. Um, but for sure, that's another reason why I mentioned about, if you've got a pediatrician that mentions things about the waivers early on, you've got a good pediatrician. Um, and oftentimes I wish, that's something that we could extend to our medical professionals, because a lot of times they don't know. And it's not because they don't want to know, it's just because, you know, sometimes resources are hard to come by. Okay. What waiver services can you expect when it comes to the waivers? Well, there's different ones. Remember, I said there's a menu, there's an array of services. You've got pre-vocational, you've got employment readiness, employment assistance, supported employment. And when I say employment assistance and supported employment, that is not VR employment assistance and supported employment. We are talking about employment services through the waivers. Yes, vocational rehab obviously has employment services, but when we are talking about long-term employment needs, that's when we're going to be looking at the Medicaid waivers to provide that long-term employment service. And there are two employment services built in the Medicaid waivers, one of them being employment assistance. And the easiest way I can describe that is everything under the sun to help somebody get a job. And then supported employment through the waivers is everything under the sun to help somebody maintain a job. Um, So it can look different, obviously, for folks. It just depends on what's needed around the supports, okay, to either obtain or sustain employment. We've got COC, personal attendant services, PASS-HAB, adaptive aids, minor home modifications, behavioral support, transportation. Transportation. Texas is big, takes a lot to get around. So transportation is another big one. And there's other therapies like OT and PT and individual skills and socialization. That used to be rehabilitation. So some of you may be like, well, what happened to Dayhab? Things changed and individual skills and socialization replaced that.
Does
Okay.
do the waiver services help pay for medications?
Oh, yes. Well, and yes, but again, Medicaid is going to
Again,
be
case by case basis. There's a
case
menu.
by case, case by case,
Well,
but Medicaid, Medicaid,
yes.
Medicaid.
Yeah. If they're on a waiver, they have Medicaid, and Medicaid will be the one that covers those.
Okay.
Hmm.
And then if someone is on the yes waiver and then the child turns 20,
Yeah.
do they just switch over to the adult health, adult mental services, or what happens?
No. The easiest answer is no. But this is where it's important that those interest list that you've been on those interest list, right? So just because you picked one doesn't mean you can't be on all the interest list. Now, I will say that I have seen situations where there may be youth that's on that yes waiver, and they may transition if they still have the eligibility for Medicaid to go into Star Plus waiver. I have seen some of those situations. Now, there may be a time lapse in that Star Plus, because of the age, but um, this is where it's important to have that relationship with your local authorities and be on
And,
those interest lists.
and just to
Go
know,
ahead,
and
Tricia.
the yes waiver is it is a short term waiver. It is only typically 12 to 18 months. The intent is they're working with the youth and the family to
Mhm.
get them the services and get them stabilized. So that is, I mean, it is very intensive. And so that is the big focus with the yes waiver. And once that happens, it's typically 12 to 18 months, they do come off that waiver. But hopefully maybe they can get on some another if it's needed.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep up with these questions on there too.
I think
Uh,
we're good for the to go back to the slides.
okay.
Their question is, what's the phone number to call these agencies? We're going to share a
We will
link to
share.
look up your agency, but also if you don't know who it is, you can just call 211 and they'll tell you.
May I
Yes.
may I say I'm sorry, Michelle, I don't have
Absolutely.
your email address, but I have Meredith's. And I was going to email her. I've got an email that shows, hey, these are the numbers that you call to get on this waiver. Now, some of them said again would be your local LITA, there's an HHSC PowerPoint that I have a PDF of that shows how you can go in and check to see where your child is on that list. So if I
Great.
send that to Meredith, can you guys get that out?
Yeah, if you send that to
Okay.
Meredith, she'll send it with the email that has the link and the slides and all of that stuff. So perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
Go
So
ahead.
we have our Medicaid state plan benefits or block grants. So this is where you're going to see our community first choice, our community care services, um, and our HCBS adult mental health. It's similar service array to waivers, but it does look and function a little bit differently. But again, that's going on the mental health side of things. Um, and that's where you're going to see. So when we're talking about our waivers, our Medicaid waivers, that state plan is under 1915C, and the HCBS adult mental health side of things is our 1915I. So it's got the 1915, but that I is what makes things function a little bit differently. And it's in relation to the mental mental health aspect of things. Whereas our 1915C, we are more on the cognitive side of the fence for things and maybe some physical aspect of things that are going on. 1915I is definitely going to center around mental health. And it looks the same, but it's not.
Mhm.
So there's some services within the 1915I that look very similar, like on the waiver side. So residential, transportation, employment, home modifications, transition, adaptive aids, peer support. There's psychiatric supports, right? There's respite, there's substance use supports, nursing, and recovery management. So some of those things look different on those supports on the 1915I side. I will tell you that one of the major entities that was across the nation, it was known as SOAR. SOAR was an amazing program. It did get
I don't like the way you're using the word was.
well, it's gone. The funding for SOAR was stopped. And so we are seeing, that uptick in what SOAR used to do, um, having some lapse, I guess you could say. I know
Mhm.
that LMHAs and mental health professionals across the state are doing efforts that they can possibly can to keep things going, but the funding from SOAR was stopped, and it has a huge dent in a lot of services when it comes to mental health. But I will say that mental health has gotten a lot of funding over several years in the state. Um, if you didn't know, there was a huge facility, for example, that was built in, I think, Dallas here recently in relation to mental health. But SOAR itself is gone. Um, I don't even think the website is there. I knew it was real when I went to the website one day and literally had a message that said, "This is no more." So but on that end, you might see some differences as you're reaching out on the LMH side because they don't have that sort of funding that they used to have. And a lot of that was kind of operating and facilitating that 1915I stuff. We have our ICF IDD facilities. Okay. These are going to be like our state supported living center, which is our larger ICF in the state. But we also have our smaller community ICFs. Please note that ICFs function much differently than our waiver group homes, much differently. One thing that I want to note, especially in relation to employment, ICFs are inclusive when it comes to the care. Okay. So ICF care is all included in one lump. So in relation to employment, if someone is working and they reside in an ICF, for example, their earnings from employment could impact that ICF bed status. And when I say that, they could potentially have a cost share to maintain that ICF bed. Just want to put that out there because it does come up, and a lot of people don't know that in relation to employment. Okay. Um, Nursing facilities, I have only come across when it comes to employment, I have only come across employment with someone in a nursing facility, I would say maybe a handful of times. But when we're looking at nursing facilities, right, this is institutional care. We've got licensed nurses, they're on duty 24 hours a day. Um, Folks are there because, something obviously very serious happened and they need around the clock care. Um, if a person on Medicaid lives in a nursing facility and goes to work, all of their earnings go to that cost of care. Very important to know that. So on the ICF end, remember I said there may be a cost share to maintain that ICF stay. Nursing facility, completely different. All of it is going to go into that cost of care in a nursing facility. Our ADRCs, our Aging and Disability Resource Center, they are a part of the No Wrong Door system. And the ADRCs were created to help streamline public access to LTSS services. Okay, so you could reach out to an ADRC as a point of access to get help with long-term care services that a person might need. And I think, Trisha, I think you probably have a link to the ADRCs somewhere in here too. So,
Yes,
oh,
that
it's right
it is.
there. It's right there at the
Yeah,
top.
built in. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
It's right
when
there.
you receive these slides later on today in your email, you can click on that link. They'll be clickable for you, so you can go ahead and check that out there. And
Yes,
you can look for your local authority here.
that's it. So you've been hearing us talk a lot about the LIDA, the LIDA. This is what the LIDA is, our local intellectual and developmental disability authority. Again, the gateway to LTSS in relation to especially our ID populations. Um, you're going to want to have a relationship and know who your LIDA is. You really do. The sooner, the better. The sooner, the better. And you can see sometimes our LIDAs, and I will tell you this is another thing, GR services, that's general revenue. General revenue has become a thing now. It's not as fluent, I will say, as it used to be. Um, Times financially are hard for all of us, but even more so when we're talking about our public services. Our LIDAs do have general revenue funds, but the general revenue funds are utilized differently within the respective LIDAs. So they may not all look the same on what a particular LIDA is utilizing their general revenues funds for. Okay. Some I've seen have used it, for example, to help with obtaining like licenses, for example, because there's some costs related to that. I've seen those help with like boarding home situations. I've seen LIDAs use it for employment services, like some job coaching, but every LIDA is going to utilize those GR funds differently. Our LMHAs, remember I said on the mental health side, there is authority for the mental health side of the fence. That is where you're going to want to go in relation to mental health needs, substance use needs, and that yes waiver is going to be on that LMH side, and that the 1915I that I mentioned earlier. Ticket to Work, our ENs, our employment networks, okay? Employment networks, they can continue to provide some extended supports in relation to employment. Typically, you'll see that the employment networks are going to work with someone who are earning above substantial gainful activity when it comes to their employment. And the reason for that being is that's essentially how they get their money essentially for
Mhm.
working with folks. Um, and all ENs are not created equally, right? And so it is good to do some research on what ENs may specialize in to see if it's a fit for you. ENs are not required, but they are a service that was created under the Ticket to Work program, Social Security's Ticket to Work program, to help provide some other options when it comes to extended supports for helping maintain employment. Private job coaching can be expensive, but it is available. There's public agencies out there, nonprofits, there's advocacy organizations. The Job Accommodation Network does provide some resources and related to where to find some private job coaches. And I definitely think if you've got someone who is struggling to maintain employment. They may not have a waiver. They may be coming up on closure when it comes to, vocational rehab, but they're still needing some job coaching. If it is something that you think is needed, I would definitely say utilize that job accommodation network for those reasons. Technology. We like technology. Is there another question? Were you going to say something, Michelle?
Yep, we're doing good. I was just
Okay.
going too fast.
Um, Technology is just really cool. Don't rule out technology. I know a lot of times we get, in our groove of things, and technology sometimes seems a little scary, but I will tell you, I've even seen technology, like those the VR headsets,
Mhm.
and when I say VR, I mean virtual reality, not vocational
Yeah.
rehab, but the virtual reality headsets. I think they're called MetaQuest now or something. They used to be called something else, but um, the virtual reality headsets. I've even seen virtual reality headsets used to help people transition into new environments. Like they'll post or they'll upload the new environment into this virtual reality headset. And for those who might struggle with new environments, and may display some behaviors because of a new environment, they upload that into the virtual reality headset to help desensitize and help someone become acclimated before they actually physically go to a new environment, for example. But resources are there. We like resources in relation to technology. You will be surprised how much technology is out there. Like I mentioned earlier, I was amazed to see this standing machine mechanism to help someone golf. I mean,
Mhm.
I think it's amazing. I think it's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. It opens the world in a whole new way. Um, we like technology. Sometimes we fear technology, but don't rule it out in relation to some of the long-term supports that can be there from technology. Okay. Extended services for youth. This is what we mentioned earlier about within vocational rehab. Extended services for youth when they're in vocational rehab can be there up to age 25. Okay. VR can only sponsor extended services when it's documented that no other resource is available. So if there's no waiver, for example, um, extended services can be provided for someone who is 25 and under if they're a vocational rehab customer. Okay, so how do you get in touch with vocational rehab? Well,
Yeah.
you can reach out to us, obviously, or you can utilize the links that are here in the slide. And then there's some other resources that we, put in here in relation to HHSC, how VR and the waivers interact, and what waivers are available. There's another resource that goes over the waivers, very detailed description on the waivers. If you click these rectangles, or yes, I think they're rectangles, you click the rectangles on the respective waivers, it'll give information about each of them. If you've got a question about the waivers, there are the policy mailbox numbers, and they will, let you know about what the waivers are if you have a particular question. I think that is everything. If there are no additional questions, Michelle, I'll hand it back over.
Can I note
Thank you
real
so much.
quick
Go
Oh,
ahead,
I can
Tricia.
hand
that
it to Trisha.
I did drop some information in the chat on, we have TWC VR has a sister program called Older Individuals Who Are Blind, OIB, because there was a question about somebody with visual impairment. So it is not related to employment, but does support with some technology and things like that, so someone can live independently in their and participate more independently in their community. So I did put the information in there on that. So just an
Thank you
FYI.
so much for that. And I've just been flipping through the last few slides that I normally go over, you know, we do these webinars 2 or 3 times a week, and they are designed to help the community and to educate you, to advocate for you. We are here. So if you have questions, if you want to see the upcoming webinars, if you would like to schedule a free consultation to discuss any questions that you have, or to learn about what exactly we do at CPG, this is how you would do it. You can call or email me directly to set up that meeting. You can call or email our office, or you can do it yourself with the QR code. Just pick a time that works for you. We do require a short questionnaire to be filled out before we can meet with you. But otherwise, for now, this is still a free consultation. Thank you all again for being here. Trisha and Nehtra,
Thank you.
you have been fantastic. And I love the way, and I love that you take the time to be here with us today and go through all of these great programs. So I'm sure you'll have some people reaching out to you after this. But again, audience members, please, we are here as a resource for you. And this is in our hearts because we like to do it. So don't hesitate to call and ask us questions. Everyone have a great week. Again, thank you for being here with us. Call if you need us. Bye.